Hey guys, and welcome to Should You Buy It, where all we do is talk a little bit about the game and whether or not we think it's worth the cost.
In this episode, we'll be playing Age of Darkness Final Stand, the RTS horde survival game where you'll have to use every ounce of light you can in order to keep creatures of the night away.
The first question that we always cover in these videos is what stage of development is the game in? And in this case, Age of Darkness is in early access and available on PC for $22.
So what exactly is Age of Darkness? Well, Age of Darkness is a game much akin to something like They Are Billions, but with some very significant differences. The game offers a survival mode in which you will have a unique hero, as well as a new light mechanic that has been introduced into the genre. Of course, there are still horde nights, but unlike other games, you will usually get a decent warning as to what direction it's coming from and exactly how much time you have before it begins. At the time of recording this video, the game currently only offers a survival mode. This is the most traditional and repeatable style of gameplay for most of this genre. In it, you'll have to simply survive as long as you possibly can. There is an endpoint though, where if you are able to survive every single one of the horde nights, you will then complete the level. Doing this will also unlock the next tier of difficulty, assuming you are playing it on the hardest one that you currently have available.
The Horde Nights bring some interesting concepts to the genre. First off is the fact that you will always know exactly what day the Horde Nights will be on and you can find where they will spawn from. They also introduced an entirely new mechanic with the game's light system. The way this works is if you have active vision of an area, then the darkness will not consume said area. You see, every time there's a Horde Night, darkness will overtake everything on the map that you do not currently have active vision of. Even if you have a small part of your territory with a very tiny gap in its vision, then you will start to get darkness on that spot. This darkness will then damage anything within it as well as act as a spawn point for enemy units. All it takes is for you to overlook 1 or 2 spots of darkness and it can completely end your run. Every time you manage to complete a Death Knight, you will then be rewarded with a blessing that will help give you a buff such as increased vision for buildings for the remainder of your run.
The difficulty factor is a big one in this game. I would argue it's about on par with They Are Billions, but on the easier difficulties, it's significantly less challenging, whereas if you turn it up, it becomes a complete nightmare to try and complete. The game will begin to create more challenging units at a faster pace and bigger quantities so that you have to expand extremely quickly in order to get ahead enough in your economy. The map layout will also play a big role in how easy the game is for you, since it's procedurally generated and getting too open of a map or not enough of the right resources near the start is basically a death sentence when it comes to pushing the higher difficulties.
Age of Darkness also introduces a hero system into the game. You see, at the start of each game, you will be able to select from a few different heroes. Unfortunately, at the time of recording this video, there was currently only one playable one. Just to give you a taste of what heroes will have to offer, you should expect them to have at least a few abilities as well as some passive ones as well. The one that we have right now is currently a melee hero with a cleave, a large HP pool, a passive AoE buff, a fire damage ability, and an AoE cone attack ability. When using the hero properly, it can easily change the course of your gameplay. For example, I was able to take on the first Horde Night with just my hero.
So now let's move into the pros and cons section for the video. First up for the pros is that there are plenty of difficulty options, with Nightmare and up being unpausable. Difficulty is one of the biggest complaints for many players in this genre, but luckily this game has 5 difficulties for you to choose from. If you are new to the genre, you still might not win right away on the easiest of these difficulties, but it will be much more enjoyable than starting out on normal or veteran. Another pro is that Age of Darkness also brings many new mechanics to the table that are great additions to the genre. This includes things like the darkness mechanic, which will take over everything whenever there is a Death Knight and allow units to spawn behind your walls if you don't have enough active vision. Then there's also the day-night cycle, which adds a nice risk-reward to the gameplay. After that is that the day and night cycle brings an interesting twist to the game. During the night, all the enemies will be stronger and faster. The good thing about this, however, is that they will grant you bigger rewards at night. Next up is that Age of Darkness has a great foundation for the game to build off of. There is quite the extensive roadmap for the game, which includes things like new heroes, a campaign mode, new units, legendary buildings, and much more. This is great as it seems like the devs intend to put this out in a fairly quick amount of time, which is definitely needed if they want the game to grow and not die out. And lastly for the pros is the very high possibility of co-op. I know that I already mentioned the game's roadmap, but I feel like with co-op being a possibility in the near future, it definitely deserves its own pro. Even though the devs have not 100% confirmed this, the fact that they have stated it is extremely likely is great, as this is something that the genre's player base has wanted for a long time.
Now for the cons. First up for the cons is that the game currently has some pretty major balancing issues. There are tons of issues with the economy at the moment, but when we really get down to it, the problems I have tend to be more related to the combat. Just to give you an example, when you're using a low-level archer, he does about the same amount of damage as a ballista, and yes, the ballista does do some AoE, but it still feels awkward to use, knowing that it's going to do the same amount of single target damage as if you just used a low-level archer. Next up is the bad procedural generation. You can start a run and have it quickly ended after about 5 minutes of exploration, or sometimes even less. It never feels good to find out that you don't have stone nearby or have metal and realize that your run is just simply not possible and have to restart. When you're doing some of the later difficulties, this can be a death sentence in the first 5 minutes of gameplay, and like I said, it is never a good thing to have so much RNG that your game can be over within the first 5 minutes of starting it when it's a 4-hour run. Next is the lack of quality of life options. What we're talking about here is a few different things. There are many features within the game that could use a huge quality of life update. For an example, if they simply included an easier way to target enemy elites during death nights, it would help quite significantly. Don't get me wrong, you can still do it, but it feels so awkward to click on these big elites whenever you need to single target them down. You often end up just clicking the little guys nearby, which don't really help you out. Lastly is yes a con, but we know this is going to be fixed over time, and that is the fact that the game simply needs more content. At this point in time, the game is lacking quite a bit. It doesn't have a campaign mode, it doesn't have co-op mode, it's missing several heroes, it's missing several buildings, it's missing a lot. And at the end of the day, I do know it's an early access title, but so far these devs seem to be putting out content and updates rather quickly, so I have high hopes for it. They have also promised all those things I just listed, so we have a good roadmap for when we can start to expect to see some of that.
So now here we are at the rating for the game, and when we rate games, we want to get 1 hour of enjoyment out of every $1 that we spend on the game. So for this game in particular, in Age of Darkness Final Stand, we would want to get roughly 22 hours of enjoyment out of the $22 that we spent. And after putting 24 played hours into this game, we give it 8 out of 10 potatoes.
Age of Darkness Final Stand is honestly a great addition to the survival RTS genre. It manages to mix the defensive elements of a tower defense with the offensive elements of an RTS very well. The game is certainly missing many quality of life features at this point and desperately needs some fresh content with the campaign and co-op modes to come. Age of Darkness does also have quite a good roadmap, which seems as though it will solve most of the game's current content issues as well as many bugs and quality of life features. If all goes according to plan, the game may even be one of the best survival RTS games out there in the very near future. With all that being said though, in its current state, we feel it is safe to say that Age of Darkness Final Stand is definitely worth the cost.
Before you guys go, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, as we recently noticed that over 98% of our viewers are not subscribed to our channel. We put out multiple new videos every single week, and your support is what makes this all possible. If you would like to support us even further and get some cool benefits, check out our membership program, which can be found in the join button below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.